Hey everybody, it's Pastor Siri. I'm a Lutheran pastor and a spiritual seeker, and continuing with the wonderful discussions that I have at the group that I help co-lead, Holy Experiment. This week we were talking about the chakras, but talking about what they reveal about Jesus and how Jesus embodies in such a beautiful way the fulfillment and the healthy version of all of our 7 chakras. So this is part 1 of the series, and I really hope you enjoy the conversation. Take a listen. The 7 chakras, they're the main ones, but we have energy all over because we're embodied energy beings. And what's so beautiful about the chakras, it's like this idea of coming from wherever we came from to have this really intense experience as a human. We needed to be able to process it. And so each of these 7 centers are like the main processing center for a different part of the human experience. And the densest part is the root, and the lightest part is the chakra. But all 7 of them sort of paint a picture of who we are as embodied souls. And what's beautiful is to talk about when they're spinning freely and beautifully, what that can mean. But as in their processing, when trauma happens or other things kick in that are scary, fear, shame, guilt, condemnation, those 4 horsemen, as they enter in, the chakras responding to the trauma will shrink or do this maybe expansion, trying to trying to find purchase. And sometimes what's cool is if you almost imagine like they're connected with each other, if one of them starts to close down, the other ones next to them might get bigger to try to compensate. And so you can almost look at a human being's personality as it's coming out and be able to see what their chakra profile is. Which ones are underactive, which are overactive, and which might be okay today, which might be somewhat balanced. The power of when we're able to start cleaning up the energy that's in that particular chakra, it can affect the other ones. But long term, the goal is when all 7 are smoothly running, we've got energy descending and energy rising up. We have the ability to manifest beautiful dreams, and we have the ability to feel deeply connected, both to heaven and to earth. And then we become this very powerful being on earth. So let's talk about what that would look like. Our root chakra it's the first thing that comes online when we're babies. It's the very first chakra that starts, and it is literally answering the question, is it safe for me to be here? So all the input that's coming in is affecting that. So if the baby's getting lots of rocking and cooing and smiling and it's relatively getting its needs met at a relatively decent amount of time, that child is like, okay, I can stay. But even so, throughout our entire life, the chakra is still processing. It's not like, oh, we did it. The baby wasn't well nourished. Never going to have root chakra problems again. Where some people, a sense of like something being ripped away from you in a very traumatic way could potentially damage that root chakra. It could happen at any point in your life. Your house burns down. Your car is stolen. Your sense of security and being okay in this world is suddenly taken away. That trauma can often be held, at least partially then, in the root chakra. So in the imbalances, as that chakra is just like, oh my gosh, I'm not sure it's safe here, one of the ways is it'll contract in on itself. And when it contracts in on itself, what tends to happen is you can see people being a little bit smaller bodied. There can be the failure to thrive babies, right? They're not taking in. But even as adults, there can be a sense of like, I'm not sure it's safe to be here. So I'm literally trying to kind of float away. These might be people who don't want to eat much. They don't even sometimes want to own much. It's almost a very ascetic way of life that isn't coming out of necessarily a spiritual calling, but rather a deep distrust that they belong on the planet. On the other side, you can have people who are searching for belonging so much that now they're reaching out and they're grabbing to try to hold them down on this planet. And that could look like owning a lot of stuff, like buying a lot of stuff, keeping a lot of stuff, having all the clothes, having. It could be like your body can never quite be full because something deep inside is like, we got to find our place here. We got to ground. And so these really contracted and these really like reaching out energies, both of them are there. It's the chakra's way of trying to find balance, trying to find the healing, but not knowing what to do about it. And very oftentimes we keep doing what we're doing. We just keep doing what we're doing, even if it doesn't work, because it kind of maybe does work, right? If you're contracted and you don't feel safe on the planet, by not getting out there, there's a level in which you're being safe. And by accumulating, that does actually make some people feel safe, right? So it is kind of working, right? Yeah. All of our dysfunctions have a purpose until they don't. Now, when I'm looking at Jesus and I'm thinking about what this means and how he shows that beautiful, healthy root chakra, the first thing I think about is actually the Christmas story, how the embodiment, Emmanuel, God with us, the whole word made flesh, first of all, blesses the fact that the divine is in the human and that we are energetic bodies. So that alone says, no, Jesus didn't show up as a disembodied spirit to give some advice and then peace out, right? Whatever it is. But no, that whole birth story shows this deep connection with the embodiedness. But then I also love all of the ways in which he's affirming of the body, the feeding of the 5,000 when people are hungry. Your bodies matter. Even healing people, touching people, your bodies matter. I also love that because fear is such a huge part of the root chakra, when he was arrested, yes, he was afraid in the garden, but he would not let that fear dictate. So it's not the absence of fear. He knew his place and his belongingness.
It's like a balance of fear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He did not let that change and dictate his actions. And so he proceeded in the way that he was going to choose, not they were going to choose for him or make him do. And then the last thing I have, which I love this I think it's a root chakra thing. And when one day I figure out how to walk on water, I'll tell you if I'm right or wrong. But I believe his root chakra was able to communicate with the water in a way in which he was able to walk on it. That something about his embodiedness and that energy was able to communicate with the water. And so his communication with nature, to be at one with nature so deeply that he could even walk on water and do miracles of manifestation in that way.
My thought was the walking on water was his chakras are all working and his crown chakra is lifting him up. And so it's more of a levitation sense and he's
Could
able to walk on
be.
the water.
Could be.
So if you can learn to levitate, you do
Yeah.
it.
In sort of the psychic world or whatever, there, at least according to the teacher that I had, there's a belief system that oftentimes when babies die or, with what we would maybe normally call SIDS or whatever, they actually, I mean, kind of to your point of, they're looking for safety or whatever, they're exiting because they know that they cannot be here.
Mm.
And so it's sort of curious how it ties into the things that you were saying.
Mhm.
The other thing that, I mean, connected or not, I don't know. But the other thing that I'm wondering about, I was thinking that chakra was about creativity, or is that a different?
That's the next one
The
up.
next-
That's the next one.
Yep.
Okay.
I think I find the connection to, what makes us stand or run, right?
Mm.
Stay or walk away. That's what helps me remember what the root chakra is. As we connect to the earth and we still have freedom to stay in the midst of what's not good, right, and true, and just or walk away from the midst of what's not good, right, and true.
Yeah.
And so that base, and if we give ourselves the freedom to, well, if we recognize the freedom to do that, without like hiding on ourselves and without I'm leaving because blah, just
And it makes me think if since it's a building block, clearly as a humanity, we've not figured this out as being part of a necessity, right? Because if we agreed on this and understood this, we would make sure that everybody was clothed, fed, and housed if they wanted it, and that their very basic bodily needs were taken care of, including those hugs, those compassionate, those you belong here things, touches that are useful your whole life. I mean, I would imagine that at any point when we get a really satisfying embrace or something like that, there's some sort of signal in our root chakra that's like, okay, it's okay to be here now. This is okay. I'm safe now. And that sense of feeling safe is so primal and so basic. And to actually notice the ways in which Jesus promotes that, lives it in his own body, his own sense of settledness, and the way he responds to people's bodily needs.
You do love. Well, of course, I'm just thinking about the birth of my great niece today in Colorado, Hadley May.
Hadley.
Hadley May, and then Mae. Yeah. And she is being surrounded by so much love and so much joy and excitement that she finally is here, that I think about, the nurturing of that first chakra for her is she's a very, very lucky incarnation.
Yeah.
That she is so surrounded by so many people are so delighted that she finally came.
And I also think it's powerful to note that even if we've had a wounded root chakra, which most of us probably have because we live on this planet, it's never too late to heal that. And there's so many ways to heal it. In fact, one of a really, really interesting thing is the first time I did any fast at all, there was a part of me that was scared, like, oh no, we're hungry. that means we're going to die. We're gonna
Oh, wow.
instantly, right? Like
Mhm.
there's some little part of me that's like, no, 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 alarm, alarm. And then to get there and then to be able to have this beautiful meal, nutritious meal that I could just grab. How lucky am I? It was like that part was like, oh, we're going to be okay. We're not in danger of starving to death. No, we're not. And I just recently completed a much longer fast. I'd never done that long before. And it was the same thing. There was something that felt really healing to my root chakra that was like, we're fine. We're okay. Look, it was like, yeah, no, we belong. We're here. We belong. We have what we need. We don't have to be anxious. We don't have to be afraid in this way. I think that there's so many different ways that we can learn to find that. Sometimes it's to be with the right person who makes us feel safe. Sometimes it's, I don't know. I mean, maybe you can help me brainstorm ways in which people feel like they can just exhale and be okay in their selves.
For me, it's at home with my beloved.
Yeah.
It's and part of it is because when I came home on Wednesday, Mary just stood up and gave me a hug and said, I know it's been a rough day, like so it's with my beloved and it's like this is my space. And even what's throwing us off as we hear of ice agents like pounding on doors, and Sue said pounding on patio doors, like back doors, is like, you can't invade this safe space around me, and we talked about not answering and just ignoring if anybody shows up in our neighborhood and starts knocking on doors. Make sure the ring camera's working and not even acknowledge, kind of thing. And that's, for me, that's like, because that's how I need balance. I need to be able to be home and safe and balanced.
Well, let's move on to the second one now. This is in the womb center, the sacral chakra. This one starts to develop, since it's right at our hips, people think it starts to develop around the time when babies can crawl, when they're literally moving their hips and can move towards something and away from something. And because you don't have any moral reasoning, you don't have any complex thinking, you just literally move towards what you want. There's my brother's toy, and you move away from what you don't want. My brother, whatever. You're not thinking about anything deeper. And so exploring the world and learning what you like and what you don't like without any sort of morality put on it. And yet at the same time, you're starting to get messages of no. You're starting to internalize. So you're starting to learn boundaries. And as you can imagine, as that sacral chakra is trying to figure out what is good for me, what is not good for me, what do I want, what do I not want? And then you start getting boundaries put up. And some of those boundaries are incredibly healthy and incredibly good for us and in our best interest. And some of those boundaries are not. And sometimes there's no boundaries, and that's also not in our best interest. And so in that way, you can see then the sacral chakra trying to process our life is going to have maybe a contracted reaction, which is, I don't know what I feel. I don't know what I want. I don't know what I like because it's not been safe. Somehow I've been shamed or told it's wrong for me to want what I want. Just think about the number that's been done on women, first of all, on just having a body, enjoying sex, right? Everything, all of that, all of the things that have put on, you can see there's such a contraction that women might have had to do to stay safe. And yet on the opposite side, that sense of complete lack of boundaries, where you might have a lot of feelings and emotions and needs and desires, but you don't know what's really yours to take and what's not okay to take. You don't understand where end and you begin, and where our boundaries might be. And so you can see when people have that kind of energy, that's where you start to have, as people grow up, that's where you start to have boundaries crossed in a really serious way. Whether it's sexual boundaries or whether it's something else, because there's no clear, healthy sense of what's mine is mine, what's yours is yours.
Mhm.
And that these are sacred needs and wants that don't need to have any shame around them, right? That there's an understanding. I know what I want, I know what I feel, and I'm taking responsibility for them, just as you take responsibility for yours. Clearly, we know we have huge issues with this in our world because there's sometimes such a lack of boundaries, and at the same time, we're getting such absolutely nonsensical, crazy boundaries of shame around things that are perfectly normal, healthy, and appropriate. Things that are damaging are okay, and things that are good and normal and human are told to be bad. So no wonder so many of us don't entirely know what we feel. We get overwhelmed by our emotions, or we don't have them. We feel guilty for wanting the thing. We feel guilty for this. We feel guilty for that. In contrast, what I see in Jesus is that he is criticized but cares not for the fact that he eats and drinks with people. In Matthew, he has more dinner parties than anywhere else, and he drinks the wine and he eats the cake. And he's criticized for being too hedonistic in some ways. And he's just like, I don't know. That's not sticking on me. That's your issue. He turns water into wine, which is this beautiful water, by the way, is the element of the sacral chakra. So he's taking that water, he's turning it into joy and abundance and community in this beautiful container, stone container that has good boundaries around it, right? Mm-hmm. So it's this beautiful symbol of honoring and the creativity of turning water into wine. He also has deep feelings that we see in various parts of the Gospels. He doesn't feel ashamed to cry. He doesn't feel ashamed to feel angry. He doesn't feel ashamed to have deep compassion. So he has feelings and he has creativity. And I also just want to add, because of the way that patriarchy has been so damaging to the sacral chakra, that the way that Jesus reacts to women is so healing, because he affirms them as independent, sentient, full human beings with their own rights, with a mind and a heart and a body. He does not judge the woman they want to stone for adultery. He has a conversation with a woman at a well who no Jewish rabbi would ever talk to. He affirms Mary of Bethany's willingness to learn. And when she does this absolute sensual act of pouring oil all over his feet and taking her hair and wiping it, he's like, oh, you know. The others are deeply uncomfortable and scandalized because they don't know how to hold that deep sensual energy, which is holy. But Jesus can recognize that deep sensual and intimate act as holy. He has space for it. So in that way, I think it's a beautiful example of how he has a very healthy sense of that womb center, and not only within himself in the way he demonstrates it, but the way he empowers and reacts to other people with their own sense of self.
When you think about water into wine, And then Jesus also turned wine into blood,
Yeah.
you know, so it goes in completely, right? The cycle of life, I guess. Um, I just thought of that now when you were talking, you know, water to wine, wine to blood. It's just an interesting.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. I've
That's
never made that
really
connection. Siri, when you said, like, just let's start with women, because obviously that's who we are, kind of thing.
Mhm.
It also brought me back to some of the self-hatred, like, can I be? Who's gonna love me? Am I going to be accepted by my family who taught me how to be, to love unconditionally when I come out to them, and tell them who Mary really is, not just my friend, and that kind of, it brings me back to that, like how unbalanced that is, and how it can be so damning to all of our chakras when one chakra is so in on itself, from my experience, and judgy and damning, and where I know where that comes from. I'm not proud of that, and maybe that's part of why I'm a pastor, so that I can take some of that stuff that I endured and say it's not important,
Mm-hmm.
or it's not true.
It's not true.
It's not. Don't listen to those voices.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really powerful. You know that that is not gospel, that is not good news, that's not the truth.
Yeah.
And so even though you have personal experience with having had no choice but embodying those messages, you weren't going to perpetuate those messages unconsciously, but actively engage in the opposite for the sake of freeing people who may have received the same messages.
It also made me wonder about, I mean, when we talk about this chakra, it's often talked about the womb. And I'm just, there's no men here to speak for themselves, but how does that strike a man to think about their womb chakra? And I think about how men are so different than women, and how is it that male chakras, womb chakras are damaged, and how it is they're reacting because of that. And not to defend any behavior, it just made me think, if I'm a man, do I think I have a womb? And so what does that say?
I think that's actually really, go ahead.
But as a source of creation.
Yeah,
So, right, I mean, you can call it testicles or whatever.
right.
The ability to create. So that's how I would connect it. But I would go one step further, which, I mean, how do they think of it? I sort of feel like they're operating in fear a lot, which is why we get the patriarchal nonsense that we get.
Yeah.
Women should look a certain way, women should act a certain way, women should be a certain way. And it's so in our culture, it's perpetuated constantly to us. And for some of us, it was also in the religion that we grew up with, which in my family was like the most important thing. The most important thing. Faith. That was faith, family, farm. That was it.
Yeah. Family farm.
That
Yeah.
was the mantra.
Yeah.
Faith was number one. And actually, that was proven to us in that faith would come before family.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Faith comes before family. My mother wishing my brother would be dead rather than be a Methodist.
Oh.
Oh, hell yes. And I'm like, do you
Hear yourself?
But it's that blind obedience. I mean, really.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you grew up with that, Mary, but that blind obedience to this patriarchal institution.
I think men's reaction to the fact that they may have a energetic womb says a lot about how wanting nothing to do with, how comfortable they are with the feminine, right? Because to talk about the womb not necessarily as a physical uterus only, but as a center, a portal for our creativity, whether it's babies come out of that portal or music or a workshop or, so I think there's something kind of cool about claiming that and saying, no matter who you are, you have a womb center, uterus or not. And let's talk about how we feel about that. But we know that men are damaged in their sacral chakra because it's part of the intentional damage the patriarchy does to deny their feelings, that they don't know what they feel, that the only feeling they're allowed is anger, and the only feeling women are denied is anger. And so there is damage, and you can see how in one instance, when it comes to feelings, there's an underactiveness, and they could be deeply uncomfortable with emotion, deeply uncomfortable with certain things. But at the same time, with so many of the behaviors that are taught, there's that overreaching that can happen too, of not knowing the boundaries of what's okay. So sometimes in one way, our chakra can be under, and another way it can be over at the same time. It's like it's trying to balance itself and find what is the space? What is the space of health? It's a lot we don't even know about ourselves, of why we're behaving in the way we do. One way it can almost feel contradictory, but there's some sort of intelligence that's trying to navigate itself and settle us.
In a biological way, men do have a womb before the Y chromosome kicks in. I mean, they have that. They are female first before the Y chromosome kicks in. Maybe some of their anger is the fact that it got shut off. Their creativity.
They could be when
Yeah,
they're all pissed off.
Exactly. I think that's it. That we're superior and
Wow, we knew that.
I wrote my thesis, thank you, about growing up, and particularly the 18 to 25-year-olds with all the theories of traditional aged college students, and balance, and the feminine, the masculine, and the androgynous. That's the words that were used, and it clearly, the research I did clearly proved that androgynous folks are more balanced. And now I think in 2026, 45 years later, that we're talking about, gender neutral people.
Yeah.
Right. And that there's this balance when people can find not the opposites, but the center. And then think about the chakra, that is the chakras that are connected to that. So just making a 45-year connection.
Well, as we sort of wrap this conversation up for tonight, I love this system, not only how it is for us individually, but what it means for us as a society. And how if we took care of the root and sacral chakra, how much healing would take place to set us up for levels of being human that we really have barely experienced, because we're still in so many ways struggling with the basic ones. So we have glimpses and moments of the different ones, but we haven't really learned systematically as a civilization to build from the bottom up. Probably because in order to do that, we need to find someone who already had some good healing and alignment in those ways to lead us in that way. And if you're dysfunctional in these, well, you can't create function. A dysfunctional person can't create a functional system. And so a lot of the healing that we can do, and there's so many ways to heal, the more we heal as humans, individually and then collectively, the more some of this stuff will start to be possible, because we'll have the capacity and the imagination and the understanding of what to create, because we just don't fully know even how to do it. So